Today I learned best of the week number 5. This year, the official Yu-Gi-Oh tournament hosted by Konami instituted a hygiene clause to rulebook. This allows judges to penalize players with dirty clothing or terrible odor by giving them a loss. Super Smash Bros. Tournament have also started implementing similar rules. There is a person on YouTube named Pygo. His content on his channel revolves around making meta decks and proper ways to do efficient side decking when new support cards come out. One of the earliest videos on his channel was literally pleading people who attend locals to bring deodorant. Hilarious. Bringing deodorant means nothing. Using deodorant, that's the kicker. Also use deodorant, antiperspirant, before starting to sweat. Just using it afterwards does little but mix the smells. That Axe plus sweat smell, yikes. Sir Christopher Lee, who played Saruman in The Lord of the Rings, read the trilogy every year from the year it was published to his death in 2015. He was also the only member of the cast and crew ever to have met J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Hearing Lee recount meeting Tolkien is really wholesome too. Lee had a long history with Tolkien's fiction. He read The Hobbit after leaving the Royal Air Force in 1945, and since The Fellowship of the Ring came out, he read all Tolkien's books once a year. Lee also had the experience of actually meeting Tolkien in person, making him the only individual involved in the film trilogies to do so, while visiting the Eagle and Child during the 1950s. We were sitting there talking and drinking beer, and someone said, "Oh, look who walked in." It was Professor Tolkien, and I nearly fell off my chair. I didn't even know he was alive. He was a benign-looking man, smoking a pipe, walking in, an English countryman with earth under his feet. And he was a genius, a man of incredible intellectual knowledge. He knew somebody in our group. He, the man in the group, said, "Oh Professor, Professor." And he came over. And each one of us, well I knelt of course, each one of us said, "How do you do?" And I just said, "Ho. How? How?" I say the same thing to girls. Congressman Charlie Wilson's revenge. When he was 13, his neighbor, Charles Hazard, poisoned his dog by mixing glass into its food. Years later, when Hazard was running for office, Wilson drove 96 people to the polls, telling them how Hazard had killed his dog. Hazard lost by 16 votes. The food court at Costco makes so much money selling pizza to hungry shoppers. It's ranked as the 14th largest pizza chain in the US, even beating out California Pizza Kitchen, among others. The ridiculously inexpensive $1.50 hot dog and soda deal has been unchanged since the deal's inception in 1985. A slice of Costco pizza, you know, is massive. We're talking about a slice that hangs way over the edge of a paper plate here. And that massive slice will only set you back $1.99, or a jaw-dropping $9.95 for an 18-inch pie, whether you choose cheese, pepperoni, or combo. So when people say fast food isn't cheap, they don't mean Costco. By many accounts the pizzas are delicious. You know, I've never bought a full pizza from Costco. Do they sell it as a take and bake? Or do you buy it cooked in all its glory? Harriet Tubman once pretended to read a newspaper on a train to avoid being recognized by a former master. Because the man knew Harriet was illiterate, he ignored the black woman reading on the train. Wow! Not being American, I do not know much about Harriet Tubman. I knew from somewhere that she was an escaped slave turned anti-slavery activist, but that was about all I knew about her. Going from her Wikipedia page, she was way more badass than I thought. Sooner or later I should read a biography of her, if there's a decent one around. At some point in the late 1890s, she underwent brain surgery at Boston's Massachusetts General Hospital. Unable to sleep because of pains and buzzing in her head, she asked the doctor if he could operate. He agreed and, in her words, sawed open my skull, and raised it up, and now it feels more comfortable. She had received no anesthesia for the procedure and reportedly chose instead to bite down on a bullet, as she had seen Civil War soldiers do when their limbs were amputated. A person with a 1-hour commute has to earn 40% more money to be as satisfied with life as someone who walks to the office. Today I learned I need to make 40% more. For 2 months at my current job, my commute was $1.45 each way. Now it's 50 minutes with carpooling with spouse. Not sure if I need a 40% pay raise, but I wouldn't decline it. I've been commuting 3 to 4 hours a day for the last year and a half or so. It really takes a toll on your mental health and personal time. Edit, didn't think this would get as much attention as it did. For those interested, I use public transportation. It's 3 to 4 hours per day, and fill my time with podcasts and reading. I don't make that much, but enough to cover my student loans and living expenses. It's approximately a 20-minute drive one way, but I don't earn enough to purchase a vehicle at the present moment. Thanks for the concern and well wishes. I'm currently looking for employment with better pay and shorter commute. Kim Jong-il once kidnapped the biggest South Korean director and movie star, who were also ex-husband and wife, and brought them to North Korea to make movies for him. They escaped by convincing him to let them go abroad to promote the North Korean film industry. Just watched an interview with Trey Parker and Matt Stone where they said that this was going to be a side plot of Team America, but they ended up thinking that it sounded too outlandish. Well, there was that time he kidnapped newswoman Avery Jessup. Worthless UN didn't do anything to help, even after that movie about her was made, Kidnapped by Danger. Bobby Driscoll, famous Disney child actor in the 1940s and 50s, including the voice of Peter Pan, who died penniless and alone at age 31 in an abandoned NYC building. When his body went unclaimed, he was buried in an unmarked grave. It wasn't just any unmarked grave. He's buried on Hart Island in New York City. Hart Island is the largest potter's field in the US, and it's also the largest tax-funded cemetery. More than 1 million people's remains are buried there. Poor folks whose remains that went unclaimed were buried there by the city. A third of the burials are miscarriages and stillbirths, and there are also limbs from amputations from the local hospitals. I watched the documentary on Hart Island earlier this week. It's owned by the Department of Corrections, so all the work is done by prisoners and there's seemingly no documentation on where bodies are buried. Helium, He, is the only element on the periodic table that was not discovered on Earth. It was found when analyzing the Sun's spectrum, hence its name, which comes from the Greek god of the sun Helios. Interestingly, there's another element that was well on its way to only being discovered in stars in the same way as helium, namely technetium, element number 43. Supposedly there is such little naturally occurring technetium on Earth, that the chances of finding it are effectively near zero. It would take some seriously sophisticated lab analysis to find it, that wasn't possible in the 1800s and early 1900s. Even today's labs would have a tough time finding it. The best chance to find it is within uranium samples. Which is odd. Given that it's element number 43, and not one of those strange high-numbered exotic artificial elements, and it's right there in the middle of the shiny silvery metal groups on the periodic table. You would think it would be possible to find some naturally occurring lumps of it on Earth, but no. It just isn't there in any observable form of metal/rock lumps. Next. Given that it has a close to zero presence rate on Earth, you would then be inclined to think that it would have been most likely first discovered/observed existing only in stars, the same way helium was. But no, you would be wrong again. Essentially, it was first discovered/observed in the early era of cyclotrons, particle accelerators, when a reflective sheet of foil was analyzed after many particle collisions. There on the foil, were the first observed atoms of technetium, created artificially by smashing particles together. So yeah, otherwise, if no one had ever observed it in the residue of particle accelerators, then the only other place we would have been able to view/observe it would be in stars themselves, the same way helium was first observed.